Hi, thanks for tuning in, everyone, and thanks for chatting with me today, Nelson. Can you hear me okay? Cool. I'm just gonna go ahead and get started, just delve into my contentions, and then I'll pass the mic over. So contention 1, making abortion illegal will likely not decrease abortion rates. According to the Guttmacher Institute, legality of abortion varied since our nation's founding, but in the 50s and 60s, there were 200,000 to 1.2 million abortions each year before the passage of Roe v. Wade. Another example of this is South America, for example, has very strict, some of the strictest abortion laws in the world, yet they also have some of the highest abortion rates in the world. According to the CDC, the most recent stat on abortion rates per year in the US was 664,000, and that's the lowest it's been since 1973 with the passage of Roe v. Wade. Contention 2, making abortion illegal would cause more dangerous procedures to occur as a lack of regulation allows for malpractice. The CDC says that the majority of abortions now take place in the safer times of pregnancy, either less than 13 weeks, which is 91% of abortions, or 2/3 of abortions at less than 8 weeks, which is the safest time for abortions to occur. The study also states that illegal abortion accounted for 17% of all deaths attributed to pregnancy and childbirth in 1965. In addition, a study by Raymond and Grimes in 2012 found that pregnancy-related complications were more common with childbirth than with abortion. Moving on to contention 3, denying a woman access to abortion leads to mental health issues. There was a study by Briggs et al. That found that women denied abortions are associated with greater risks of experiencing adverse health effects like anxiety and depression. And finally, contention 4. Illegal abortions disproportionately harm low-income and minority women. According to the Guttmacher Institute again, from 1972 to 1974, mortality rate for illegal abortion for non-white women was 12 times that for then white women. I'm sorry, if you need me to repeat that again, I can. Abortion is not the ideal, but we need to understand that realistically, banning abortion and making it illegal, overturning Roe v. Wade is not going to get rid of it. 75% of abortion patients are poor or low income. This is a problem, and simply banning abortion is not going to solve this. It's not going to get rid of the demand.
All right, well, thanks, Sarah, for taking me on. And so I think, is this your first debate? So as a judge? Yeah, so I get the honor of having the first debate. All right, so the title here is Abortion Should Remain Legal in the US. And I take that as all abortion should remain legal. And if that's true, I think, would that include the 8-pound baby boy that's 8.5 months old? And I think that, now we can take the extreme case, of course, and I think the vast majority of people would agree, at least with, and Ron Paul had this on The View, where they all agreed with him. They wanted abortion legal, but then he said, well, what about the 8.5-pound baby boy? And they all said, oh, well, that's murder. And I think most people, most reasonable people would agree that an 8-pound, 8.5 baby boy or girl would be murder. So I don't know, at what point somebody wants to make abortion legal. I think that's a difficult question in and of itself. But let me go on to mine. So number one, constitutionally, I think this should not be a national federal government issue. I think it should be a state issue. So again, I agree with Ron Paul on this. He's gone into detail on this in some of the debates and stuff he had years ago. And why? Well, all issues of force are dealt with at the state level. So the federal government doesn't, up until recently, deal with things like murder and property crime and things like that. So I think we should deal with this at the state level. And before Roe v. Wade, that's how it was done. Roe v. Wade was not the legalization of abortion. It was more the nationalization. And I would call it the backing by the federal government of abortion, which I think in and of itself is a big problem. So number two, the fetus. So if we're saying abortion is legal, are we again going to say that the taking of a life is okay, or are we going to say that it is just a fetus? And it is generally accepted, as in pretty much every doctor, scientist, everything agrees that the fetus is life. The question is whether it is human life. So the fetus is generally accepted that it is life at conception. So again, the question of what kind of life is it? Well, I would contend that it has a human father and a human mother, and human egg and a human sperm come together to form a human life. So I think it is a human, and I think the taking of a human life is morally wrong. And I'm out of time, so I'll come to the rest later.
Okay, so starting out with that extreme case you brought up, that is an extreme case. And while there may be a kind of spectrum of morality, we could call it, when talking about abortion, at the end of the day, we need to look at the costs versus benefit. How many cases are there where there are 8-pound babies aborted? And that's terrible. Excuse me. No pro-choice, no pro-abortion person, is happy about that sort of thing happening. But we need to look at what the majority of abortions really entail. And like I mentioned in my contentions, 91% of abortions occur at less than 13 weeks, and 2/3 occur at less than 8 weeks. So again, while those rare cases do exist, they are rare. And we can't base this entire debate off of those cases. You do talk about the constitutionality, how each state should look at abortion rather than the federal government. Okay, let's go with that then. But what would be the difference there? I understand where you're kind of coming from and saying that to have an entire nation support abortion, that's probably, I'm assuming, what you have the problem with, because ideologically not everybody supports it. But with your state, you can, better gauge your kind of what your districts want. However, it still comes down to the same thing. The legality of abortion is different from the morality of abortion. When you ban abortion, it doesn't make it go away. It will still occur, and it actually occurs at more harmful levels. So if we look at life before Roe v. Wade, that's a perfect example of what happens when women don't have access to these things. So I would like for you to kind of address all 4 of my contentions. If you need me to repeat them, I'll go over them quickly just so you can have a refresher. Making abortion illegal will not decrease the rates. Making abortion illegal would cause more dangerous abortions to occur, like illegal backdoor abortions type thing. Denying a woman access to abortion leads to mental health issues, and illegal abortions disproportionately harm low-income and minority women. So if you could address those, that would be great. Thanks.
Okay. So number 1 was abortion rates. And again, this is many decades ago, and we didn't really know anything about what a baby was. So, I mean, it literally was thought of as something inside of you. I mean, back then, the technology didn't allow the kind of technology we have today to see what the baby inside of you looks like. Didn't exist. Not only that, but you also didn't have the ability to keep a baby alive to the point that we do today, which I think is around 6 months. You can take the baby out, put it on a ventilator, and what would they call, synthetic womb type of thing, and keep it alive until it's ready to sort of live on its, what we call on its own, right? I think most people would say that. And so I think the abortion rates, you would have decreased rates. In fact, we've seen that as mothers, with the invention of the sonogram, which I didn't actually know, I don't know when that was invented, but I think the technology is relatively new. And that the rates, when you show the mother what the baby inside of her womb looks like, the abortion rates do go down. That showing the mother that it is an actual baby inside of them decreases their likelihood of termination. And so I think you could, instead of aborting now that we know what it is inside the woman, instead of aborting, we would have a higher adoption rate. And there are vast numbers of people out there who are just dying to adopt. They want it so bad they go overseas and they spend tens of thousands of dollars doing it illegally in order to adopt. And we could have a lot more adoptions. Number two was the alley abortions, basically the back alley abortions. Again, it wasn't legal. It wasn't illegal. It was illegal in some states. And so I think if you get it down to the state level, you could at least, this is kind of my contention here, you could at least have states where it is illegal. And if somebody wanted to have an abortion, I think at least the people in that state would not be kind of sanctioning it. That you could, if you wanted to help someone get their abortion, you could take them to another state, to New York or something. I'm in Washington, you're in California. Obviously, it's not ever going to be illegal here, although I think it should be, because I think laws are meant to protect life, and whether or not they actually do, it's illegal to murder, people still murder. So, but that doesn't mean you should say, well, people murder, and we want murder done in a more sensitive manner, so we should not outlaw it or something. Number three was the mental health of the mother. We know that the mental health of the woman that has the adoption or has the abortion significantly decreases, that it's a big mental health problem having an abortion. And I can get to the other one.
Okay, so just because that last point is kind of fresh in my mind, this study by, who is it? I'm sorry, Biggs et al. Actually said that women being denied an abortion may be associated with greater risk of initially experiencing adverse psychological outcomes compared to women who did have abortions. So from the sources I found, that last claim is just false. I don't know the science behind it, but I guess this idea of just not being able to access and get the abortion that one feels they need causes the adverse psychological effects. Back to your point about laws being made to protect life. If abortion were legal, it would still protect life. It's tricky. So you have to, can you put a price on life? That type of thing. But when you look at the numbers of deaths, the death toll of from abortion, when abortion wasn't federally legal, they were much greater than they are now. Now there are more complications with childbirth than there are with abortion. When before, I believe it was in 1965, there were 200 death from abortions in that year. So it does protect life. And it seems kind of contradictory because yes, most science does say abortion is murder. However, we also have to look at what happens when abortion is not readily accessible from a clinical standpoint, because then the demand is still there. People still feel the need to have an abortion. You talked about adoption. That's not feasible for everybody. And we also need to look at the fact that still the majority of women who get abortions are low income, and they are typically minority women. And to get to file for an adoption is a long, tedious procedure, sometimes can be very expensive. I know you didn't get to that fourth contention in your time, but we can talk about that later. So really, abortion remaining legal does protect life. It protects life in a less explicit way because we just need to remember what happened before Roe v. Wade was passed. Yeah, I guess I'll just pass the mic.
Okay, so you mentioned low income. It doesn't cost anything for the woman that's having the baby to do the adoption. That's virtually always paid for by the adopter. The people, the family, usually it's a couple that can't have children of their own. They want to go out and adopt. And it's a very expensive procedure for them to go through. As far as low income, and you said nobody wants an abortion. I know we generally do say that, and we think that most people don't like abortion in and of itself. They think of it as a necessity. I would actually disagree with that. And I think that there are people out there that push abortion because there's a lot of money in it. And Planned Parenthood, of course, being the 1.5 to $2 billion company, I'm going to call them a for-profit corporation. They had commercials promoting give your friend an abortion for their birthday, things like that. Just really, I think, outrageous ads. So there are people that are happy with abortion and have, I think, negative desires for it, purposes behind it. Again, back to the mental health. So could we say that, well, first of all, so there are vast emotional side effects for women that women experience after an abortion. I think similar likely to women that have a miscarriage. So there are a lot of negative mental side effects to women that have an abortion afterwards, and they feel sorry for it. In fact, I would point to Sonia Richards-Ross, just because that's a very famous athlete. She had an abortion right before the Beijing Olympics, gold medal 400-meter winner. And she said it was now it was a difficult choice, but it was a choice that she chose her career. It wasn't like, wasn't money or something like that. It was, she wanted to make money and she wanted to be famous, and she was, but she said it was a big emotional process. So I think it's not something people forget. And I think as far as the emotional stress of being forced to keep your baby to term, could we also say that there is emotional stress of being forced to keep your child from birth to 18 years old? I think you could say women and men, fathers and mothers, go through a lot of emotional stress there too. So should we say that maybe we should be able to have them abort their 3-year-olds or something like that? Which really gets down to kind of what I really wanted to get at, is what age, how far along should abortion be legal? And I've got 15 seconds, so we can get into the woman's kind of the abortion, other aspects of abortion, the woman's body and things like that. So your turn.
So in terms of the age of the fetus or baby, whatever you want to call it, being aborted, I already mentioned that 91% of abortions take place less than 13 weeks of pregnancy. And I think that's plenty there. This isn't a debate about what is right or wrong about abortion. This is a debate about whether it's right or wrong for it to be legal. And it has to be right for it to be legal because of one, the inequality in privilege in our society, and the inequality of education and availability of contraception. And we need to think about what would happen if abortion were illegal. The demand still exists. Abortions would simply become more dangerous. That life that is so holy would still be destroyed or cut short in some way, because to some people it is the only option. So I just can't get down to the morality of abortion in itself when we need to be talking about like the actual logistics of making it legal. Like I said, abortion death rates were at their highest when it was illegal, because there were less regulations, more malpractice. But we could also say that was because it was years ago. But we've made advances to make it a safe procedure for the woman whose life we also have to value and whose needs we also have to value. And that seems to be forgotten. I have a list of the top 3 reasons why women get abortions from Guttmacher Institute. You may have seen this before. It's a little dated, from 2004, but I'll mention it anyway. 74%, which is the greatest, this is the top reason, got an abortion because it would dramatically change their life. 73% said they could not afford a baby at the time, and 48% said that they were a single mother. So those are the top 3 reasons that women typically get abortion. And while pregnancy caused by rape or incest only makes up 1.5% of all abortions, should those victims be ignored because those cases aren't quantifiable enough? They don't stand out as much as the others. I just struggle with this idea of banning abortion, because in a perfect world where everybody had the same access to education and healthcare, sure. We should be able to ban abortion. That is an idealistic view, though, and realistically, we can't with these inequalities in our system.
I think we are more equal than we've ever been. The inequality, the income inequality is at its lowest level ever. We all have access to healthcare. There's no question about it that you just walk into a hospital, they will treat you. Now, I think it's unfortunate that if you walk into a hospital or you walk into a PP clinic or something, then their first question is, when should we schedule the abortion? But that, and I think that's sort of on the topic. You said separating legal from morality. I think most laws do represent some kind of morality. And again, we're talking about ending the life of what I believe to be a child. And so I think the morality of this legal question is in play, should be in play as to whether or not it should be illegal or not. Because again, you know, at what age, you haven't really said what age. I know you said 91% is less than 13 weeks. So do we say 13 weeks is the cutoff because the majority have them at under 13 weeks? And I don't really see a real reason to, I mean, that's just a purely subjective standpoint, because we could go to 90% or we could go up to 95% or something, right? So morality does play into there. You mentioned contraceptive, and I think that there is something to the idea when a woman has unprotected sex, because that is what we're talking about here. Women know how they get pregnant. These things are not just magical, and I don't think that women are stupid to not have any idea how the pregnancy occurred. And so there is action in there, and there are consequences, you could say. And I don't think you should be able to just pass consequences on and say, well, you know, I've got this child in me, I could just get rid of it. And so I think making it illegal would make people think a little harder about their actions, right? Should we have protected or unprotected sex? You know, I think we could, the father issue could come up here. We could get into that if you want. But there are incentives. So I know this sounds ridiculous, but I absolutely think that there is something to it, that when the woman's having sex and they have unprotected, there is in the back of their mind that they could have an abortion if it came down to that. And if they thought maybe I can't have an abortion, it would come into play. Okay. So you said the top three reasons it will change their life. I don't see why that's a reason to validate or legalize abortion, that it's going to change my life. I mean, there's a lot of things that would change my life. That 5-year-old is going to change my life. I have to keep my 5-year-old. Why can't I just throw him in the garbage? Affordability, there's a lot of welfare programs out there and all that. I don't think affordability is a good excuse either. And being a single mom, back then it was different. Today it's, we can get into that if you want me to.
Okay, so I'm just gonna work backwards because that seems to work best. I think change, like not wanting your life to be changed so drastically as having a child is a completely valid reason to have an abortion. I want to present this example. I don't know if it's been used before, but I'm just gonna throw it out there. So think of sex like getting in a car. You get in a car, one day you decide not to put on a seatbelt. You're driving, you understand the consequences of not putting on a seatbelt. You get in an accident, you get injured. Are you then not supposed to be able to repair your injury or fix the situation to better yourself, in your opinion, because you knew that it was your fault when you didn't buckle up in the first place? Or what if you did buckle up? What if you got in the car and said, I'm buckled up, we're gonna be fine? So you keep driving and you get in an accident and you get injured, and you want to have surgery or get treatment because you said, I took every precaution I could take before I started driving the car, and I've been hit, and I'm going to change my situation because I was prepared for this. I took the safety measures I needed to ensure that this would not happen. So I don't know if that works for you, but I think that'll be a fun discussion to have. Do you want the mic?
I mean, if you're done with the story, I just thought I'd take that up, since that way I could really address this instead of having a couple of them. I just don't see the similarity, because you're talking about you, yourself, and an inanimate object, a safety belt, a car, things like that, right? We're talking about two individuals getting together. No, there's no real accident here. They intentionally got together. Now you can get into incest, but I brought up the 8-pound baby, right? And so you're saying we shouldn't make laws based on the relative rarity of the 8-pound child. So I don't see why. And yeah, we shouldn't make the rule based on the very rarity, right? So that incest being a extremely rare event, we shouldn't say because incest happens and one person gets pregnant because of incest, we can make the whole law. So let me get back to, but your seatbelt example, we're not talking about going to the hospital and repairing yourself. We're talking about ending the life of a child. And I just don't see how that example relates to this issue here. Because again, you get in the car by yourself, you go, someone hits you, you didn't see it coming, you had no idea. I would assume you didn't drive right into the telephone pole. So whereas again, a child is the product, there's one way in which you can have a baby. That is, you are inseminated by sperm. Now you could go to you can go to a clinic and have it done on purpose. There's no question about that. It's totally intentional. Or it could happen as sort of kind of an accident, but it's not really an accident because it is something you knew could very likely happen. I mean, even with the condom, the rates are still something of 1 to 3%. So I don't see the similarities of the argument there.
Well, I think you're just missing the point then. You get in a car, just like you're having sex, you understand that anytime you have sex, you could get pregnant. Most people understand. We cannot assume that everybody knows. We can't assume that everybody has the same education about sex. We just can't. But say you do. You have sex, you get in a car, you understand the consequences of either action. If you have sex, you could get pregnant. If you drive a car, you could very well get hit and get in an accident and get hurt. You will get more hurt if you're not wearing a seatbelt. So if you wear a seatbelt, then are you in the right to say, hey, I should take what has happened to me that is an accident? Because when people get pregnant on accident, it's called an accident. I don't know what else you would call it. There are people that have sex for other reasons than just to have a baby. I hope that we're clear on that. So this thing happens to you that you were not intending. And should that person have a right to do something about it to fix it?
Well, again, in an accident, you get into the car by yourself, you drive down the road by yourself, there's nobody else involved here, and you're saying, should you be allowed to fix yourself? Okay, that's fine. Obviously I wouldn't say no, but now we're talking about another life, right? You have sex, the result is a third human, which, I mean, again, I would argue it is a human life. And so you are ending a human life. And are we saying that because it's an accident, because maybe I drove down the road last year, I went to the hospital, fixed myself, now I had sex and she got pregnant, and now she wants to, quote, fix herself, unquote, right? But it's just not the same thing, because again, we're talking about you can do whatever you want to your own body. I wouldn't argue with that. But in pregnancy, we're talking about your own body and a third person. That is mother, father, and a third person, right? So you could say a second person to you. And so, again, you're talking about a life of another human. So I think that's an important argument here, that it's not just, in fact, I had a whole thing on that. I don't know if we wanted to get into that or not, but the idea of the woman's body. So I'll let you take that up if you want to. You can even bring in the violin argument, the violinist argument if you want.
I'm actually going to skip the violinist argument because I don't like that one very much. But I will say that you did mention that you can do what you want with your own body, which I think is a very interesting thing. You often see those on like protester signs at the women's marches and whatnot. but it is the question of whether or not it is the woman's body when the fetus is in it. And we have to ask ourselves, can you value one of those lives over another? Can you say, like, if the woman wants to abort the baby, can you say that the fetus's life is more important than the woman's decision? And I don't know, I think that's something I haven't even decided yet. I would like to discuss that further, but does it come down to that? Does it come down to the fetus versus the woman, and that life versus this decision and the rest of the woman's life? Again, yes, there is a father involved, but at the end of the day, it is happening to the woman's body. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. You said you had something to say about the woman's body.
Okay, you did bring that up earlier. The whose life do we value most? You brought that up a few segments ago, and I don't think that even if you were to do a cost-benefit analysis, what is the cost to the woman? Would we do this in monetary terms or something? And what would be the value of the child that's being aborted, right? And I think human life actually has a somewhat infinite value. And so to say that the woman is going to be, again, with this, I come back to this, the Sonia Richards-Ross, is it valid, I guess, that she chose an Olympic gold medal over the life of a child? I mean, I don't think so. So to say that, I mean, I think you did say, actually, the inconvenience of a child, she should just be able to abort it, and I don't think so. I think that's not a reason to abort the child, that it would be an inconvenience. Because again, I would say, you know, a 10-year-old can be an inconvenience at times. It really puts a cramp on people's lives. I have friends that are having kids, and I kind of joke with them, is like, oh, you know, your travel life is over. You better. People always say travel while you're in college because you have no responsibility, right? You have no family. You're not married, probably. You got no kids. You got no money. That's why they don't. But so inconvenience is not a thing there. So the argument about the woman's body is usually the argument. And I say, okay, you know, I got no problem. Women should be able to do what they want with their body. Men should be able to do what they want with their body. That is, it's not the government's responsibility. You want to shoot yourself up in your own house with heroin or whatever, an overdose. It's not the government's problem. But in this case, you have a life that cannot protect itself. And so I think this is an instance where you should say, you know, the government has very little role in society, and one of them is protecting the life. And if it's the woman's body, you know, at what point is it no longer the woman's body, such that the man has to pay? You know, dad has to pay till the kid is 18. So shouldn't we say that the father's responsibility should be none? I mean, if it's 0 to 9 months, then the baby's born, and then after that point, he's fully 50% responsible. Why is he not responsible from 0 to 9 months? Why doesn't he have any rights there? And two, the most important argument is it's not the woman's body at all. It's got its own organs, it's got its own blood type. And at 9 months, it completely separates and becomes its complete 100% own. And it still doesn't live on its own either. So I'm out of time.
Okay. So let's talk about the inconvenience a little bit. It still comes down to the fact that, like, sex is about more than just having a baby, so that when people have sex, they don't just agree to having a baby. Do you think that? Nod, yes or no? Like, do you think sex is consent to have a baby? I'll pass the mic real quick.
Well, so I think people are rational and they choose what is best, they believe is best for them, and there are consequences they didn't think of, and you have buyer's remorse and stuff. But that is always something that should be on their mind, and oftentimes people are caught up in the moment and that's not on their mind, but that is something that everybody has to know when they're going in to have sex with each other. So yes, I think a possibility of a child is a part of the sexual interaction. Thanks.
Okay, just wanted to hear your take on that. So to have sex is to agree to have a baby. But if they take all the precautions, if they do everything they can, the woman's on birth control, they use a condom, they do everything they can to ensure that this doesn't happen because they're really not ready for it. They don't have the finances for it. Whether or not they use welfare is not the point here. It is a huge change in your life. And I think one should be able to have sex without saying, I am going to risk the possibility of having this huge dramatic change happen to my life. I just don't think sex should be elevated to that height. So about the inconvenience, that's what I have to say. I mean, I think we should kind of go back to the legality a little bit. While laws do come from morals, that is very true. But when we look at the legality of abortion, it is more moral for abortion to remain legal. You're harming less life when abortion is legal. As I've shown in my statistics from over the years, passage of Roe v. Wade, it's become, abortion is at the lowest rate it's been since the passage of Roe v. Wade. The death toll is the lowest it's been, I think, ever in terms of abortion. So when we're talking about the sanctity of life, keeping abortion legal preserves it. I haven't seen you kind of show me how actually keeping it legal is detrimental to the life, because in terms of number, you're saving more people when it's legal.
I don't think using statistics, because again, we're 1970, I always forget if it's 73 or 74, either way. You're talking about a major change in not only technology, but society and everything. So the death rates, I don't think it would be anywhere near where they were. I also don't think that with the technology you have today, again, the pill was legalized in 1960 something. You have a lot more birth control possibilities. It's cheap. It is as close to free as you're ever going to get. You can buy a box of condoms for about 25 cents a piece. Who doesn't have a quarter, right? On your way to the woman's house, pick up a quarter on the concrete. You can buy your. And so contraceptives are widely available, much more so than they were back then. I think society has changed to where the use and the purchase of contraceptives is different. There's a Seinfeld. Just watch Seinfeld in the Sponge. Okay, so funny episode. I do think that, well, I won't get too much into that, but I do think that the convenience is not a legitimate argument to have an abortion. So, well, I wanted to say about the woman's body. Is that a little thing here? So it's not the woman's body, and this, you have sex, you get protected, you do all the protection, and we all know that it is a possibility. No matter what you do, it's a possibility, right? I buckle up my seatbelt, I've got my airbags, I drive no more than 45 miles an hour. I might still get into an accident and die. I'd go 10 miles an hour, someone in a big truck might hit me. Life is about risk, right? I mean, we sell as much risk as we can to insurance companies. They take our money and our risk. But it's kind of like when you invite the child into your body, which you're asking the possibility of it occurring. It's no longer part of your body. And while you can do whatever you want with your body, I was saying you can do whatever you want with your house, but if you invite a dinner party over and then you go outside and start bombing it, you can't say, well, this is my house, I can do whatever I want with it. So no, you kind of had people inside of it, right? So I'll address, what else would you like me to address? Your other topics that I had there.
Okay, so you talk a bit about, you're still talking about how it's not her body and how everyone just automatically knows the repercussions of their actions. It's just not true. Not everybody does know. Not everybody has access to contraception. But even if people do have access to contraception, you could still get pregnant. It's not always 100% effective. So if you take all of these things into account, you're pretty much saying that people cannot have sex without the acceptance of you. It's an invitation for a baby, basically. So fine, we'll take that. I guess we agree to disagree on that point. But okay, so are there exceptions in your opinion for rape and incest? Again, I already mentioned that there are a very low percentage of abortions from pregnancy from rape and incest. It's only 1.5% of all pregnancy. However, is that an exception for you? Of all things, you said that those top 3 reasons women get abortions don't work for you. You said that the inconvenience, the dramatically changing your life, that one's not acceptable. You said being a single mother is not acceptable. So if somebody is raped, or if their baby is a product of incest, would that be acceptable? Can I pass the mic so you can answer that?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I think inconvenience. There are a lot of inconveniences in life. You know, I got to stop at the crosswalk for some old woman to cross. Right. I'm going to talk about an inconvenience. Oh, why can't I just run her over? Right. Save myself 5 seconds. So obviously not the same thing, but it just goes to my point that to say that it's an inconvenience to me. You know, I don't think that's a valid argument, because children are inconveniences, and I think we all agree that you shouldn't be able to dump your 1-year-old, right? So as to the rape and incest, here is where I think it's always immoral, in my view, to kill the child, no matter how the child was, because it's not the child's fault, right? I think this is a big argument, is the child really doesn't have any choice here. You know, you get into the idea of what age should we kill the child. Some people say, oh, well, you know, as soon as it's able to survive outside the womb, and I say, so like what, 12, 14 years old, right? On its own, survive on its own outside the womb. So that's like, I don't know, 10, 12 years old. I guess Tarzan was 4 or 5 when he was raised outside the womb by himself. Okay, so on the legality, I don't think that's necessarily a reason, because it doesn't make it any more moral. So, you know, two wrongs don't make a right, they say, right? So I don't think that's really a reason to make it legal. Now, could we say exceptions for those? I think that's a starting point as to getting rid of the abortion is available to anybody, anywhere, anytime. But I don't think that makes it morally right, and I don't necessarily think that that would mean that abortion should be legal in these specific cases. Although, again, what I would say is that on the federal level, I would agree to having these certain things, health of the mother, which actually is almost universally said is never the case. But I would say putting these riders on any amendment that goes through that outlaws abortion on the federal level, passing it back to the states, right? So but basically I'm saying I don't think that rape and incest is a good and proper excuse to make abortion legal, even in those cases. There are many children that are the result of rape and the result of incest that when they're raised, they become very productive members of society.
And that's fine, and that's great. But why should a woman be subject to that? Why should a woman have to endure that? Why should a woman have to carry her rapist baby inside of her? Even if it is 0.5% of all pregnancies, why should that 0.5 suffer? That doesn't sound moral to me. But talking a little bit about, had something here I just wanted to touch on real quick. I want to bring up the study I mentioned earlier by Raymond and Grimes about pregnancy-related complications, how today this study was in 2012, but we'll call it today. Complications and death from childbirth is more common than death from abortion. So it does, in the end, come down to whose life do we value more, the fetus or the mother? Because we've gotten to a point medically where we can induce abortion in a safe manner, where there's like 2 deaths per year. In countries where it's illegal or not regulated as much, so there are definitely not the same safety measures as there are in the US, there are 44,000 deaths worldwide in third world countries from abortions. So that's another fact we need to look at when comparing that to the number of actual abortions. So childbirth is deemed more dangerous than some abortions now, than legal abortions now. And then back to this idea that illegal abortions disproportionately harm the low-income and minority groups. We do need to discuss that. We do need to talk about how higher income and white non-minority groups would have access, more access, better access, safer access to abortions if it were illegal, even if it were illegal federally. If Roe v. Wade was overturned, abortion could still be legal in some states, but white and higher income women would be more capable of accessing such care, and that discrepancy is immoral. I'm gonna pass the mic.
Well, I don't know the exact numbers. I didn't catch if you said that it's more dangerous worldwide or in the U.S. to have. I think is that in the U.S. it's more dangerous to have a child than an abortion. Okay. So there are deaths to. Well, let me get to that. There are complications that happen in pregnancy, but I think almost universally, if you ask the mother, would you rather abort your child at so many weeks or die giving birth? And it's a horrible tragedy, but I think the mother almost 100% of the time, or maybe not 100%, but the vast majority of the time would say, no, I want this child to live over me, right? And when we know mothers will sacrifice themselves for children all the time. We see it all the time that they give their children food when they're starving. So as sad as it is, I think most of those mothers would prefer to see the child born. So I think they know the value of the life. As to whether it's fair or right, and again, with the rape and incest, now, this might not go over well with some people, but I think life can be very cruel. I think we would all agree with that. You know, we're all born with, some people are born with disabilities. Some of us are born with issues where we're more prone to injury and prone to different things. Now, I wouldn't make the morning after pill illegal. I think that's not I don't think that's abortion anyways, just preventing the birth or preventing the life from forming. So I don't think even most Christian organizations aren't against that. So that's available. So if you are raped, well, that's for rape. I guess it wouldn't be for incest necessarily, but you're not forced to raise the child, and some people do raise the child, and these are tragic situations, but I would prefer that they would give them up for adoption than to kill the child. And I don't think it's fair to the child who was born of this terrible crime that his life or her life is ended before it even begins. So I think that's all I have to say on that. I'll let you go.
Okay. So your assertion about the mother probably wanting to sacrifice herself is kind of speculative, but I see where you're coming from. Again, I just don't think that if we stand back and look at that situation from an objective point of view, not as the mother, we as the people would look at that and say, yeah, but still more people are dying this way than this way. So we should make this way, we should not ban this certain means of fixing the situation to some women that feel that it's the only option. let's talk about adoption versus abortion. When a woman has adoption as an option as opposed to abortion, the demand for abortion still exists. People are I'm sure that people, well, actually there is, when women get abortions, they have to receive counseling, they have to be notified of the other options, including adoption. I'm rhyming way too much. And so even though they're aware of these options, they still may choose abortion. So in the end, even though adoption may be more moral than abortion, people still want abortion. So doesn't it make sense to keep abortion legal because it keeps it safer for both the woman, her physical and mental health? So again, adoption, it would be great if everybody who got pregnant and didn't want the baby would put their child up for adoption and it could go to a loving home, but it doesn't work that perfectly all the time. We have to admit that. The demand for abortion still exists, and that is the primary reason abortion has to remain legal, because whether or not it's legal, the demand is going to exist, and making it illegal is not going to make people think, maybe I shouldn't do it. People are still going, because we've had it been legal for this long, people are going to now think that it's more of a right than before. It's not like something like, if they made killing somebody legal, that would be something completely revolutionary and different. But in this case, it's something that women fought for, and now we felt the right we had was ours. We felt we've earned it. So if you took it away, it wouldn't be something like, maybe I shouldn't do that, because so many people have fought so hard for it for so many years.
All right, so I'll pass this mic back in about a minute so that you get more time. Otherwise, I'll just cut off 3 minutes. So I think as far as making it illegal, we're talking about making the doctors' clinics illegal and punishing doctors. Specifically, we would punish doctors like Gosnell and other horrible ones that do these what I would say are crimes. And I don't think it's a right. I really don't see where the right to have an abortion comes from. I don't think it's a right. And I know some women want it, but there are a lot of women that don't want it. And so I think it is important, though, to understand that it's not a right. I mean, it's more of a granted by the Supreme Court right, but I think rights are natural rights. And I've actually debated that. So I'll pass it over, though.
Okay, well, that's a topic for a different time. But in terms of rights, this is something that has been fought for, and it's definitely not something that was suddenly passed through Roe v. Wade and is suddenly accepted by everybody. Of course, not everybody thinks that it's moral, but what happens here is that even the people who are pro-choice, myself included, I'm not pro-choice because I one day hope to have an abortion. I hope to just pursue that right that I own. No, I don't. I'm not pro-choice because I want to have an abortion. I'm pro-choice because I'm aware of the discrepancy and inequality in our country, the inequality present in our country, that disproportionately harms certain demographics. So again, while abortion is not ideal, I mean, you mentioned that some people might think it's great and be proud of it or not think it's serious at all, but it needs to be legal. It just needs to be, because the demand is still there. The demand will not go away by making it illegal. I feel the same way about guns. If we banned all guns, people would still want guns because it's been a right for so long. And it would not cause gun use to decrease. So that's kind of what my argument comes down to in the first place. Abortion isn't perfect. Abortion isn't great. I don't think it's celebrated in our society. You may think so, but I don't see that. But it's something that needs to be available to some women, because some women are not fortunate enough to be in a place where they feel that they can properly raise a child. And at the end of the day, it's up to that woman especially if she is a single mother who has nobody else to come to an agreement about the situation with. And actually, most abortion clinics do require consent from the spouse in order to get the abortion. But if it's a single mother, she's not required to do so. So that decision lies on her and her only. I have 40 seconds left. Kind of go back and forth until we're done.
Okay, this is probably my closeout. I got less than 2 minutes. So I think it is celebrated in society, and I think that's terrible. The Women's March was basically I want the right to abortion, and I know most of them had their children with them, so I think that was pretty tragic. I won't get into the foundation of PP and the celebration of you talked about inequality, but that's exactly what PP was founded for, was to stamp out certain races. As far as the inequality, that's a very long topic, but I will say that since the black single black mothers was about 23% in 1950, and it's 73% today. That's I don't know, that kind of reverses the way you would expect it given abortions, and it's nothing to do with access or anything. It's the welfare state and the fathers in the home, so that's a whole nother issue. But I will just go back to I think, number one, I think it should be the Ron Paul method of bringing it back to the states issue, where all issues of force are taken care of. The fetus is generally accepted to be life. I think given that it has a human father and a human mother, it is human life. And at what point, subjective point, do we say that we should be able to end the human life? And I got into live outside the womb. I think it's 10 years old or something. And it's not part of the woman's body. So I think the idea that a woman should be able to do what they want with their body is fine. But when it comes to a child, it's not part of the body. It's got its own blood type. It's got its own organs. So so basically I think bring it back to the states. The end.
Okay, so quickly I'm going to go over. You talk about the Women's March. That's completely speculative. I was actually at the Women's March, and again, people aren't fighting for pro-choice or pro-abortion rights because they want an abortion themselves. It has nothing to do with whether or not they have their kids with them. It's about fighting for other people other than yourselves. Again, I'm pro-choice. I don't want an abortion. Yeah. I fight for it because I know that women in this country do want an abortion. And so that right should be accessible to them. Planned Parenthood provides many other services. Abortion only accounts for like 33% of what they provide. Many of their other services actually prevent the abortion from happening in the first place. So you should probably reconsider that. If we go back to before Roe v. Wade, when abortion was decided on a state-by-state basis, we will go back to these inequalities between race, how minority women are 12 times more likely to die in an illegal abortion and less likely to be able to access safe legal abortions, especially if they have to travel to a different state. Again, I'm just going to run through my main points, so whoever's judging this, it won't be me, don't worry, has a good idea of what happened here. Again, my contentions: making abortion illegal will not decrease the abortion rates. Making abortion illegal would cause more dangerous procedures to occur, as lack of regulation allows for malpractice, and denying a woman access to abortion leads to mental health issues. And illegal abortions disproportionately harm low-income minority women. With that, I will just close out here. Thank you for everybody for watching. Thank you, Nelson. I can't read that. Oh, yeah. You're welcome. This was a great first debate. Thank you.